We're privileged to be chatting to Lindsay Gayman, a global cannabis consultant, a leader within the medical cannabis industry, an educator, an advisor, and above all, a healer.
Thanks for joining us, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
It's so exciting to talk to you about this. So let's get right into it.
Shall we? Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people know the terms CBD and THC, but let's just go into the differences first of those two compounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the two biggest compounds that we have today that we're working with. So we have THC, and there's three different things within THC. So we have sativa. Sativa is more of an uplifting strain. In the morning, you could almost look at it as a kickstart to your morning, having a morning coffee. Your indica, which is more for sleep, insomnia, anxiety, it's to slow things down. And then we have a hybrid, which is usually a 50-50, and it's a mix of sativa and indica together to bring about, they augmentate with each other to bring about the best therapeutic effects. And then we have CBD, which there's two different classes. So there's CBD that comes from the cannabis sativa plant, and then there's also CBD that is derived from just the hemp plant. And the difference, what makes that difference is from the hemp plant, it only has a very, very small trace of THC, whereas CBD derived from the cannabis sativa plant can have higher doses of THC in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about those two. Now there are about 113 that have been identified.
Yeah, there's about 113 that have been identified. I mean, if we look at it, there's 500 plus compounds literally to this plant, and there's 80 natural occurring cannabinoids actually within the plant. Mm-hmm. And it's actually limitless. We've just scratched the very gentle surface of what is actually within this plant. If you take a look at the THC and CBD, if they're given at the same ratios, so let's say on a 1-to-1, it cancels out that euphoric feeling that many, many people are afraid of. And actually, people will go to every end so they don't experience that head feeling, that euphoria. It causes a lot of anxiety for people. So the neat thing that we're finding out as we explore more of these individual cannabinoids, which is the basis of cannabinoid-based medicine, is the two cancel each other out in a way. They still have the same effects, but they help each other together. Right. And a lot of people do a ratio of, let's say, 12-to-12, 1-to-1, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so it's not a matter of you're only going to take CBD or you're only going to take THC. There is that where you take them both, and that has a different medicinal effect than
exactly. Right. Yep. And I mean, some people, when you're dealing with really, really severe pain, nausea, we see it in chemo patients, autoimmune disease. We see it in, severe rheumatoid arthritis. This is where you'll see higher doses of THC and not quite as much CBD. And the unique thing about people is we're not all wired the same. So cannabis affects us all very, very differently. So sometimes it isn't the first try that actually works. It's the third, fourth try once we figure out what the good combination is for that individual.
Yeah, that's the same with most natural medicine, because we utilize everything differently.
Absolutely. But I think maybe some people want that instant gratification. They want that instant, okay, here we go. We've started it. My anxiety is going to be healed. This is going to happen. And that isn't always the case. And often people will give up on it. And it's only through and this happens for a lot of different reasons, but this is where education comes in so importantly, is to help educate people. You might not see the therapeutic benefits right away, but looking down the line, it's just like anything, like we said, anything, holistically, such as homeopathy, a variety of different things, takes time to actually feel the effects.
Okay, so the education you're talking about is certainly from a patient perspective. They need to be patient. And medical practitioners need to understand, if it's a certain type of person, they need to sort of really do the holistic thing and talk to them and find out about their lifestyle, etc., other medication that might have affected them in ways. And if so, they can sort of gather some information that will help them with the dosage, the initial dosage, and then to be able to understand how to adjust per person. Is that fair?
Well, that's the most ideal scenario. I think what we're up against is that, when you go to, let's say, the emergency room, our frontline nurses, they'll ask, do you drink? Do you consume cannabis? But nothing's taken really anything further. So this is where cannabis meets healthcare. And somehow we need to bring the two of them together so it reflects. We need to honor people's choice in their journey of health and wellness. So there's a lot of things I think that can be implemented right from the start. What strains are you using? What's your method of application? How does it work for you? What are you being treated for? Just to break through some of those stereotypes and barriers that people, unbeknown to them, actually counter-transfer forward onto the patient. Just to really unify the two need to start going hand in hand. We can't keep them separate. So then the education for our frontline nurses and other things become so imperative at this point. Yeah.
Well, that's going to take a while, because I think initially
it will.
We haven't had cannabis as medicine legalized for many years throughout the world.
Absolutely.
So the first point of call when somebody asks you, do you take cannabis? It would have been shock and horror, the response from you. Like, how could you do that to yourself? And now it's got to change the whole perception and say, well done for doing that, because this is an astounding plant. So that initially has to change.
It really does. We're just coming out of prohibition started in 1932. If you look back to 1850, doctors were prescribing cannabis and cough syrup, so we are just coming out of this prohibition. So the evidence-based knowledge that doctors are seeking, because doctors are very scientific, so they need these things in order to properly dose, properly understand. And that's where these gaps are. So yeah, you're right. It will take time because it's just emerging right at the moment at an overwhelming rate.
Well, there were so many, not necessarily case studies. Well, I'm sure there are a lot of case studies, but a lot of people going out there and saying, this has changed my life.
Absolutely.
A lot of viral videos with Parkinson's. I know that's been going around quite a lot. Takes cannabis, and suddenly they're not shaking anymore. They can suddenly
profound, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, seizures, epilepsy. We have an epidemic of. It's a global problem, epilepsy. You're looking at millions of people who struggle with this, and CBD is very effective in helping with that. Anything from autoimmune, chronic pain is a very big issue that people struggle with every day, and it's like night and day when someone finally is out of that pain, you know, what happens, and to watch what is happening to them. It really is powerful.
I mean, pain is absolutely exhausting, and
it really, really is.
Affects your mood. Just speaking of mood, though, I know you've spoken briefly about anxiety and its cannabis' amazing effects on it. Other mental health issues, if we're talking schizophrenia, bipolar, has that been explored at all within?
Yeah, actually, you know what? That's awesome. That's a great question. I think there's two sides to this debate. Some people in psychiatry feel that there's no place for medicinal cannabis at all whatsoever. And then you have another side saying, no, hold on. Yes, there is a place. I think if we stay away from, if we stay away from the THC and we focus on the CBD, I think we could have some great effects. Because like I said, the THC with the sativa, you know, those highs, you know, with bipolar, sometimes it's this rapid cycling, the mania, schizophrenia as well. So we don't want to induce, you know, a lot of energy. We just want something nice and calming. So I think CBD in conjunction with the regular medication regimen is more appropriate. But there's some places that won't even entertain that idea at this point.
Well, I guess someone who has a mental illness, been known forever as a drug, goes against the grain.
It really does.
It really is that education, and just getting more and more case studies and scientific evidence that this actually really does work. And we're going to what the ancient knowledge is, and we're sort of learning what we should have been doing all these years.
Well, and that's just it. And, you know, in the States, I read that they're looking for an abundance of marijuana so they can start these research studies. And, you know, which is, they're so deeply, deeply needed, because at the point you can't trust everything that you read on the internet by any means. You know, you have to be very, very selective in where you're getting information from. And you have two sides of it. You have the extreme activists, and then you have this side. I saw a woman actually in a forum. She said, we're going to start seeing these bodies start to pile up. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, no. So it's, you know, it's very extreme in some sense, but, you know, hopefully we can meet somewhere in the middle. The medical community, everybody can kind of meet as we begin to sort of go through this.
Yeah, well, I mean, with new legislation in various countries, it is beginning to have a major impact on health and wellness. But do you find, I mean, just you're in Canada, is there a good integration with your family doctor? Is that something that's,
you know, yeah, I can talk to my family doctor about it. But a lot of people, this is where a big struggle actually is that our general practitioners, our physicians, don't want anything to do with it. The program, it was implemented in 2009 to have the legal right to, you know, use medicinal cannabis. Yeah. And it's been an uphill battle because doctors don't know enough. I think I read a statistic of only 13% of doctors have been exposed to the endocannabinoid system within our bodies. And it's an entire new system. So I've also heard that, you know, doctors are looking to the licensed producers in Canada to make those judgment calls. But that's almost like passing the buck in a way. I think to properly administer medicinal cannabis, there has to be a treatment plan. It has to be with your general practitioner because they know you, you know, in treatment and things like that. So it's definitely a big struggle right at the moment. A series, I've heard quite a few sad stories, and that's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, is to help bring that awareness. New generation of doctors are more supportive than the older generation of doctors.
Yeah,
in a huge way.
Do you think might become a new area of study. This say it for me.
The endocannabinoid system is definitely a huge new area of study. I mean, I just did an article the other day that's on LinkedIn, and looking at the receptors that are in our body. They're in our brain, it's in the liver, in the heart, in our intestinal tract, in our peripheral nervous system. We have these receptors, and that is our endocannabinoid system. And how to identify, there'll be talk about endocannabinoid deficiency or hyperactivity or hypoactivity. How we go about and identify those things, I'm not quite sure. There hasn't been a lot that's out there, but it's this incredible system. Even it includes the integumentary system, which is the skin. So there's therapeutic effects that happen when you actually do use medicinal marijuana, but it's just figuring out the right combination and how to do it.
So we might see in the future young doctors studying this system along with all the other systems within the body.
I would hope so. Absolutely. It has to happen in order for cannabis-based medicine to emerge. It has to be. It's an absolute. It's not about just growing, cultivation, distribute. It has really nothing to do with it. But when you're looking at the healthcare foundation of it and the implementation of it in colleges and universities, there has to be this knowledge of the endocannabinoid system and how it works.
Absolutely. Yeah. But Lindsay, I've seen. If we look at natural medicine, a lot of natural medicine is given to people through a compounding pharmacy where it's mixed for them. But I have seen quite a number of medical cannabis therapies or pills or however it's taken, and it's there's this one that's high in THC, this one that's no THC, and this one that's a mix. So that's a sort of we're looking at it in terms of possibly like a pharmaceutical where sort of a one size fits all thing. Is that something that really works? I mean, we have had the discussion that everyone metabolizes differently, so you've got to keep trying with your therapy, whatever it is. Or do you see it becoming a compounding pharmacy type?
I do believe a lot of countries are taking the approach. New emerging countries that are implementing medicinal cannabis programs within their country are using pharmacies as the dispensary, I guess you could say. So the doctor would then therefore write the order, go to the pharmacy, and then they would dispense it. But I don't believe that we'll see one kind of generic pill, let's say. I think we'll see it in flower form, in tincture, in oil, even edibles, topicals, in a variety of different ways. We'll see it actually dispensed. And that's going to come from the companies that are involved with the production and distribution worldwide. So you could also have something that's called like a full spectrum that's including more cannabinoids, but it's derived from the hemp plant. You could see an isolate. So you're going to see a variety of different things that I do believe will be dispensed from the pharmacy, but it won't be just one or two very generic things that are given. I think it'll be specific.
Okay, so it really, really does mean that everybody needs to be educated. Those those taking. So let's
absolutely.
Let's just talk about quickly the different ways of taking it. I mean, everyone knows about smoking a joint. A lot of people have probably eaten it in a muffin. And we've seen a massive rise in different products now. There's CBD infused beer. There's everything. Even the local pizza shops got CBD pizza base, and you start, what does that mean? And is it just a trend, or
Yeah, and I think I think it's a trend when you start to see, alcohol infused. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I have numerous colleagues that that's something, that they're doing, but that's more of a recreational use.
Yeah.
And it can be easily get kind of muddled if you start trying to combine the two. So recreational has its presence, and then medicinal has its presence. I guess really, that is exactly the way it is. And recreational, this is where you're going to see the infused alcoholic beverages. You're going to see culinary being used in meals. And you'll also see cannabis tourism, which is resorts that are specifically made, and it's cannabis related. So that would be the more recreational side. Medicinally, there is the edibles, but it would be used for things such as, if you have GI tract issues, Crohn's, colitis, that might be the most appropriate application for someone. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It does. We're going to have, there are a lot of ways to take it. And
it really,
are more effective for some issues, medical issues, as you said, right?
Absolutely. You can even use the example of vaping, loose leaf. I know there's a lot of controversy with the cartridges right at the moment for e-smoking and for vaping cannabis. And the general rule of thumb now is just loose leaf would be the most appropriate to vape without any additives within. Yeah. But if you vape at a lower temperature, it creates a very different effect as opposed to if you were to vape at a very high temperature, you're going to get a very different effect. So it's really neat to see the contrast between the two. Wow. Someone who's struggling with mental health difficulties would vape at a lower level, whereas someone who's dealing with chronic pain, autoimmune, would vape at a higher level to get that effect. It's interesting how it works.
That is amazing. You mentioned hemp earlier, so let's bring that into the conversation. There's a confusion about the difference between hemp and marijuana.
Yeah.
So give us a little rundown.
Yeah, absolutely. Hemp's really interesting. For the longest time, it's been seen as more this industrial usage. But now what we're finding is it is rich in and plentiful in cannabinoids as well. And this is where you see more of a full spectrum coming from hemp. Hemp is legalized in all 52 states in the United States, Canada, in many, many other countries. Hemp is legal as long as it stays within that parameter of less than 0.0%. I do believe it is. But it has many healing properties to it. It's just without the THC in it.
It's like a miracle plant, isn't it? I mean,
pardon me?
It's like a miracle plant. You can use it as
really?
a food source to build with, to make textiles, and now you're saying it has massive medical benefits as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can even take the roots, and what I find so fascinating, whether it be in the cannabis sativa plant or whether it be in the hemp plant, if it's organically grown, you can take these roots and you can make pastes for wound healing. You can make capsules. These obviously aren't all things that are legal, but I think in time will come. But there's literally every bit of the plant can be used. It's amazing.
That is astounding. It really is truly a miracle. And it doesn't take, it grows very quickly as well. So
it does. Yep. Yeah, it does. And, some people, I work alongside a company, actually newly, Frontier Botanics, and they're based in the UK and going to be doing production in South Africa. And it was looking at indoor and outdoor. There's benefits to both. actually, and what the specific strains that you use. So yeah, it's exciting. It's a very, very exciting time to be within the industry. I think what people need to realize, though, it's some people are in it for the overnight success, and that's fine.
Yeah,
that's perfectly fine. I'm in it for the long haul, the longevity of it, and the companies who I collaborate with align with that very, very similar thought process. We're in it for the long haul to make a difference with an important stress of education.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. That's what you do. So if you're listening to this and you want to get in touch with Lindsay, we've got your contact details up with this podcast, and anyone can get hold of you and just ask you. Lindsay's a wealth of knowledge, a walking encyclopedia on amazing plant. So if you want to navigate everything, just in terms of new legislation, if you want to find out what strain you should be growing in order to get into which type of healing, all of that, you need to just get hold of Lindsay. And we're going to be talking to you a couple of more times, Lindsay, and I'm very looking forward to it.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to it very much too.
To delve further into all of this. So thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to future conversations. Thank you.